Coca-Cola is quite famously red. Very striking, very sort of powerful colour. And I read a story quite recently, which I'm sure quite has through this, is that in America the idea of Santa Claus being red and white comes from some early Coca-Cola advertising. Yeah, which is quite, I didn't know that. I sort of need to do a little bit more research on that. But I was quite interested in it. And they do identify, particularly in the States, not so much here, they do identify very strongly with the big part of that's yellow. But of course, all of the cars, all the Ferrari, just about every Ferrari, when you think of Ferrari, you always think of red. Apple, starting with this logo, which is about colour. It wasn't actually about diversity particularly, but it was about a range of kind of possibilities. They wanted to sort of illustrate that. But actually now they've come back to quite a simplified graphic, a kind of very much transparency graphic, and that identity rather. And that very much is then communicating to us about that idea of transparency. You notice if you go into we looked at Apple stores last week, for example, they're incredibly transparent. Sort of naturally walk into them, walk through the door, you can see straight through what's happening behind there. Of course, interestingly enough, you can look at the two together and what is white light, and when that white light is refracted, it splits the colour of the spectrum. And if you notice, the colours of the spectrum there aren't in the order that we're imagining. Anybody think why that might be? No? That's Apple trying to say they're slightly different, but they think differently, but they don't. You probably remember that. Am I right? Yeah, thank you. But they think differently and they're slightly rebellious. That's how it's broken down. One of the most famous pieces of design uses these kind of slightly candy kind of colours. And there's a quote from Steve Jobs there: "I want to be able to eat it." So there's that whole idea of not just colour as a representation, but something that kind of stimulates other sort of things in your thinking. Yellow and blue, we all know this one. Why is it yellow and blue? That's simple. But what we very rarely see colours as pure colour. They're generally influenced by the sort of lighting conditions that we see in colour. But also, we can produce colour with lighting. This is an installation by somebody called James Turrell, a famous light artist. This is the Guggenheim Museum in New York, which he had a show there where he bathed it in different colours. So this is essentially, the Guggenheim Museum is essentially a white spiral space designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, and he's using light to completely change our perception of that space. That's the blue one. Quite a different space to be in. It's lost what Wright would have probably thought of as that purity of form. It still has forms very strong, but communicating quite different messages. This is somebody else who uses light a lot, Dan Flavin, and he tends to use it in quite a simple kind of way. Most of his work is consistent of simple fluorescent tubes with gel covering. So quite relatively simple technology, but incredibly effective. There's a group called Architects of Air, and here they're using plastic kind of PVC structures to create not only really interesting spaces, but also the colour is coming through daylight, coming through that PVC. So there's no lighting in here at all. So it's natural daylight coming through a coloured membrane. Creates really interesting.